And let's just close our eyes for this meditation on unity after the election and healing the US. It's funny that in a public situation, other than going to a group meditation, the only time people close their eyes, as today, and this week with the inauguration and the honoring of those who have passed from COVID, the 400,000 in the US and millions around the world, that in Biden's talk, the now president's talk, we had a moment of silence. It's almost as if instinctively, when we're referring to those who have passed away, passed to the other side, depending upon what your belief system is, that we know that's the most efficient and effective way to honor them. Not only honor them, but unite with them. To celebrate them. Remember them. Because underneath it all, and the reason why we always end each week with a meditation, because underneath it all, we too are spirits. The most important part of ourselves we can't see. We can't touch it, can't hear it, can't taste it. And yet that life force, that which distinguishes a living being from one who has passed, when you look at the human body, there's no difference between somebody who's alive and somebody who just passed away. All the organs, all the cells are still there. But the life force, not even that it's gone away, but it's no longer localized. Localized in that body, playing through that nervous system, those 100 billion neurons in the brain. It's free, unencumbered. And yet, when we're in this body, we so easily lose track of that. That part of ourself, the deepest, most profound, essential aspect of who we truly are. We don't feel it at all, particularly when we're angry, when we're in judgment, when we're being forceful, when we're being indifferent. We are in our own little world, our own body. We see everything as separate. We see that we need protection from you. I from you, you from me. We have to protect ourselves because you may want what I have, and you better protect yourself from me because I may want what you have. So when we close our eyes to honor those who have passed, truth, it would do us well to realize that We should close our eyes more often, not just when we go to sleep, but when we're awake. Take that quiet time, that silent time, multiple times a day. I do, personally. Set my little iPhone for as little as 3 minutes, sometimes 5 minutes, sometimes 10 minutes, sometimes 20 minutes, sometimes even longer. But certainly 3 to 6 to 7 to 10 minutes, probably 2, 3, 4, 5 times a day. To get back to that essential self. The part that is always united with every other brother and sister out there. That's beyond the conflicts and the difference, beyond party, beyond religion, beyond education, beyond background. Idealistically, we attempt this via our words. We call ourselves the United States of America in this country. The United States. And yet we've been anything but for quite some time now. And suddenly, not making a political statement, Democrat, Republican, but we have a president who's come in who is speaking words of peace. His whole inauguration speech was about unity. That he's going to represent those who didn't vote for him equally to those who did vote for him. Enlightened words. The next 4 years, we'll see if the actions follow the words. But everything starts with a thought. And when we speak the thoughts, we put it out into the atmosphere. It becomes a thing, a vibration, sound waves that others hear, and that gets registered inside of those 100 billion neurons. So just speaking words of peace and unity, togetherness, oneness, love, trust, faith, grace, compassion, gratitude. Rather than constantly enumerating how different others are from us, how they're the ones at fault. And indeed, sometimes our brothers and sisters, they can be wayward. But if we hold on to that notion, and that's all we see, then we're the ones who are equally complicit. We are equally responsible for the disunity, the disharmony, rather than the unity and cooperation and collaboration. The state that we really were meant to live in. And which truly nurtures us on the deepest of all levels. Because if we look for a reason that we've been put here, there it is. What is the purpose of life? Not to get the biggest house, the biggest car. It's to come into that, not just divine recognition, not just on a mental level, but into that divine practice of constantly transforming and transmuting our own lower tendencies of judgment, anger, fear, forcefulness, constantly transmuting that. Simply by recognizing that we're doing it to start with, becoming conscious that we're doing it, becoming conscious that, hey, maybe there's another way. Becoming conscious that, hey, maybe there's something inside of me that I first need to look at before I judge somebody who's outside of me. Becoming conscious that I could actually just hold that space, that higher space, and allow them to feel that acceptance. I can say words that either break the bonds between us or that unite us. Simple words, the most simple 2 words in the world, not I love you. Those are beautiful words, but the simplest words in any adversarial situations can begin with I understand. I'm not you. I haven't been through everything you've been through. But I believe I've experienced something similar. I believe that I can understand your anger, your sadness, your grief, your longing. You leave somebody defenseless in the best of ways when you say that. Maybe the proper word is we leave them offenseless. There's no offense that they can do because there's nothing to hit. It's like when lightning strikes, if it hits metal, there's sparks. If it hits rubber, nothing, it gets diffused. We want to be like that rubber. The title of the talk was The Number One Fix for a Radioactive Relationship. And in parentheses, I put, and country. Given this is being given at the pinnacle of what a few weeks ago was possibly one of the worst moments in United States history, attempted insurrection, overtaking of the government. But that didn't come from nowhere. On some level, those people had their reasons and were self-justified in their reasons. But the ultimate reason is pain, and the pain of disconnection. Healing doesn't occur overnight. Yet it can be pretty darn amazing how instantaneous things can be when somebody feels we get them. We just hear them out, let them speak their grievances. Don't pretend to understand the totality of who they are, what they've been through, the depth of pain they've experienced. And yet we all have our own travails. And so on some level, just them sensing that we are okay. We're not in opposition to the pain they feel. Perhaps to the inappropriate actions, yes, but not to the pain. To err is human, to forgive is divine. We could add to that, to simply hear somebody out is divine. Beyond forgiveness is that there's nothing to forgive. People are just living out whatever radioactivity that is inside of them. We use that term in the talk because radioactivity is a natural occurrence in the universe. The universe was made unstable. We have atoms that do not have an equal number of protons and electrons. So there's some imbalance of charges, and that manifests itself in the form of that atom shooting out an electron, or shooting out a positron, a positive particle, or shooting out a gamma ray, which is just shooting out energy and trying to get back to balance. We're exactly the same. We're made of those atoms. We're made of stardust, the very stars that formed the atoms that are inside of us. We're made of the same stars, made of that same substance, breathe the same oxygen, breathing the same molecules and atoms that everyone on Earth has breathed. Think of that. There's only so much oxygen that's in the atmosphere, and it gets circulated. You can be sure that we have breathed the air if we're around for any length of time. Ultimately, those molecules that are in our very enemy, even if they're on the other side of the world, we share that oxygen with them. So underneath it all, there's both extraordinary cooperation in the universe in the form of how the substance of physical creation gets made by atoms joining together, like H2O, two hydrogen atoms joining with one oxygen atom to form a stable molecule. So there's tremendous cooperation, and yet underneath it, somehow or another, the Creator saw to set things up where there's always a little surprise. This little instability in a multitude of atoms that don't have an equal number of positive and negative, what are called nucleons or nuclear particles. And so they've got to give off some energy, or they've got to throw off one of their particles. One of those particles may hit us. We're literally talking about getting a sunburn or a suntan. If we're talking about radioactivity in a more benign sense. If we're talking about people, we're going to get hit by some of their radioactivity at times. But if we are stable inside of ourselves, then we're not going to become radioactive. We'll let that particle pass through. We'll absorb it some way. We got enough neutrons, neutral particles. It all boils down to discipline in our minds, to how we're going to respond. Practicing love rather than fear and judgment, practicing compassion rather than indifference, practicing grace and gratitude rather than expectation and entitlement. We literally create the worlds around us in our personal relationships, our professional relationships, and we collectively create what's happening nationally and internationally. Thankfully, we all have those better angels of our nature, and that's simply our desire to allow things to return back to those higher sentiments of love and trust, faith and grace, compassion and gratitude, rather than fear and judgment and entitlement and indifference and expectation. It's all a choice, but a choice that requires a lot of diligence, because we can easily fall from our own highest intentions. We allow ourselves to get too wrapped up and don't stand back for a moment. These mirror neurons we have, literally, that tend to mirror others. As an example, you're in a movie theater, somebody coughs. Very typically, other people will start to cough. Somebody smiles, they're laughing, we tend to smile and laugh. But when it comes to that more antisocial behavior, that more disruptive, that radioactive behavior. Our job is for them to mirror us, not for us to mirror them. Just holding the space, speaking their truth, asking questions, simple as that. And just breathe that in. Just hold that space for just a few moments, 10 seconds, 20, 30 seconds. Just let's hold the space. Rather than mourning, we're celebrating. We're celebrating the evolution of mankind, throwing off these old ways. All of us doing the best that we can. I think we'll just leave it at that. I'm not even going to ask you to come out of that. I'm going to close it out. Just stay in that state for as long as you feel like it. Everybody have a good evening, and here's to new beginnings.